Good morning, everyone. For this morning, I am going to discuss all about topic 5, which is modeling pollutant transport in relation to our subject course MEP 414 or urban drainage. So at this report, I am going to discuss the technical aspects which involve first, the stormwater related pollutants, second, pollutant sources, and third, the transport mechanisms. First technical aspect is what the so-called stormwater related pollutants. So basically, stormwater is the result of precipitation coming from the rain, hail, and other kinds of precipitation. And of course, during heavy precipitation, so there is a big tendency that toxic substances and other chemicals may be carried down to the drainage system. So, for the stormwater related pollutants, these include toxic substances such as heavy metals and organic chemicals, oil and grease, nutrients, phosphates, nitrates. So, these nutrients such as phosphates and nitrates are basically coming from the rice field. Then, oxygen demanding substances, sediments, may be clean or contaminated, and of course, pathogens such as bacteria and viruses. The following pictures are example of toxic substances. So we can deny that here in our own localities and municipalities, we have experienced this such kind of scenario and problem, especially in relation to our drainage structures. And of course, in some other areas or in some other countries, especially those countries and areas with no drainage system, they also experience this particular problem for a long time period. The next picture reflected the stormwater related pollutants coming from oil and grease. The next pictures as well reflected the stormwater related pollutants coming from the nutrients, for example, phosphates and nitrates. And these kind of nutrients are basically coming from the rice fields and other agricultural areas and fields. Another stormwater related pollutants is coming from the oxygen demanding substances. The first picture reflected the organic waste such as animal manure and plant debris that can be decomposed by aerobic bacteria, or these aerobic bacteria required oxygen in order to process and decompose these particular substances. While the second picture reflect the major human resources such as the sewage, animal feedlots, paper mills, and food processing facilities. Well, the next picture reflected the one sources of stormwater pollutants such as the sediments, or these are the foreign materials or foreign substances coming from the coastal areas such as sand and other sediments present in that particular area, and especially during heavy precipitation, especially heavy rain. So there is a big possibility that these sediments will be carried down to our drainage structure, our drainage facilities. The next set of pictures show the pathogens, or these pathogens are also one of the main sources of our storm water related pollutants. So under pathogens, there are viruses, bacteria, and oftentimes there are fungi. So pathogens also contributed to the advantage and disadvantage aspect in our drainage structure. In the advantage part of these particular pathogens, viruses and other bacteria may help in the decomposition process of some substances that are present in our drainage structure. while in the disadvantaged side, these particular pathogens or these bacteria and viruses may affect the lives of our marine aquatic animals. And of course, it may contribute to the water pollution in our bodies of water, such as rivers, oceans, and the likes. The next technical aspect that will be discussed in this report is the so-called major sources of pollutants. We all know that there are a lot of major sources of pollutants that may enter in our drainage structure. And some of these major pollutants are as follows. First, air pollutants. Second, eroded soil and minerals. Third, construction materials such as weathered paint, wood preservatives, roofing, and siding. Then fourth, manufactured products such as automotive products and worn parts, cleansers, solvents, fertilizers, and pesticides. Still in the subtopic under major sources of pollutants, so these particular examples or these particular activities done by humans or these particular activities are associated with human activities such as the flora and fauna, exposed outdoor storage, handling and disposal of chemicals and other materials. Next, exposed process equipment. Then, unmanaged or improper releases or disposal of leaks, spills, illicit sewer connections, and illegal dumping are some of the major contributors or some of the human activities that may contribute to the more major sources of pollutants of our drainage structures. The next technical aspect that will be discussed in this report is the different models in pollutant transport. So there are a lot of models in pollutant transport, and in this report I will going to discuss the four common type of pollutant transport. So the first model transport is what we call Lagrangian particle-based transport model for solutes in drainage water. So for this particular type of model, so the function is to calculate the potential contamination paths of solutes in drainage water in an urban area during a pluvial flood event. So it talks about or it refers on the solutes that are present in the drainage water, especially during a pluvial flood event. And of course, the necessity to capture the complexity of a surface runoff model and the coupling of pipe and surface are investigated. Still in the Lagrangian particle-based transport model, so in this section, the transport model used in the study is introduced. It builds upon flow fields calculated with hydrodynamic model. So if we will say flow fields, let us have its definition. So a flow field is the distribution of the density and velocity of a fluid over space and time. So it involves velocity and density and of course space and time of a particular fluid. Then flow fields are calculated with hydrodynamic model. So this hydrodynamic model is defined by the following. So hydrodynamic models are an efficient, comprehensive approach to representing coastal water dynamics. These numerical computational models can be used to simulate currents, water levels, sediment transport, and salinity. So this particular hydrodynamic model is very useful and very widely used, especially in simulating currents, water levels, sediment transport, and salinity. An example of hydrodynamic model is represented by this diagram. So in this particular diagram, the current of the flood or water dynamic has been reflected. So as what the definition say, that this particular simulation or model is widely used in simulating currents, level of waters, and the likes. Then, still in the Lagrangian particle-based transport model, so this model is used especially in volume flow calculation. So the hydrodynamic one-dimensional or two-dimensional numerical model, which is called high-stem X-strand 2D, is used to generate surface and pipe flow velocity fields during a flash flood event. And this high-stem X-strand 2D is defined as follows. So it is the classic option for hydrodynamic simulation of sewer systems in the complete revisited version 8 among others. This expands for simulating pollutant loads coming from the surface. Use high stem extent for providing or for proving hydraulic efficiency, for example for master plans, as well as for new planning and replanning of sewer networks. So it is in line with the sewer systems, and it is a classic option for hydrodynamic simulation. Another main function of Lagrangian particle-based transport is associated with dissolute transport. So the transport of contaminants is modeled with Lagrangian approach, assigning the mass of contaminant to a number of particles. Any chemical reaction, absorption, or other partitioning of the substance is neglected here. The purpose of this study is the analysis of transport paths rather than the concentration values, so that this simplification is justified. So to reiterate the main function of Lagrangian particle-based transport model, so it is concerned or mainly concerned with the transport of solute down to the drainage structure or drainage system, respectively. The next model transport is the two-dimensional pollutant transport model for sewer overflow impact simulation. So the 2D pollutant model implements the eviction dispersion process for intercell scalar exchange. While assuming the irregular triangular model cells to be well mixed, the model is suitable for simulating dissolved pollutants that are not subjected to significant biochemical transformations. The model is validated by implementing several analytically solvable problems and demonstrated in two case studies from Garforth in United Kingdom and Canvo in Vietnam. The model integrates the inundation and pollutant transport processes in convenient one-dimensional or two-dimensional coupled package. The next model transport is the so-called sediment and pollutant load modeling using an integrated urban drainage modeling toolbox, an application of City3. So the goal in this model was to implement and test computational routines for representing sediment and pollutant loads in order to evaluate catchment surface pollution. So this particular model involves and concerned particularly on the sediments, because sediments is one of the major sources of pollutants in drainage structure. Then tested models estimate the accumulation, erosion, and transport of pollutants aggregately on urban surfaces and sewers. The toolbox now includes mathematical formulations for accumulation of pollutants during dry weather period and their wash off during rainfall events. So it is also involved mathematical formulations in order to compute or in order to simulate the accumulation of pollutants, especially during dry weather period or wash off of those particular pollutants during rainfall events. The last model is the so-called mathematical models of pollutants transport. So among the most urgent problems of environmental monitoring, note should be taken of simulation of pollutants transfer in water objects. This problem is especially urgent for urban conditions as there exist loss of pollution sources. Its solution is of great ecological, economic, and economical significance, allowing to investigate the influence of different pollution sources on an ecological object, both separately from each other and jointly to predict the results of such influence and the consequences of nature protective decision made against the pollution sources. So this particular model transport is mainly concerned with the sources of pollutants. And of course, these mathematical models of pollutant transport is the best or one of the best solution to have a great ecological and economical significance. Because as what I have said earlier, it is mainly concerned in identifying the major pollutants or the major causes of pollution, especially in concern with the drainage system. That ends my report on topic 5, and thank you so much, guys, for listening and for tuning in with this a more technical topic in relation to our subject course, urban drainage. Thank you so much and enjoy the rest of the day.